So I don't know about you, but my task list has been a staple for me over the last decade, and I felt like I was being more productive, but at the same time I just keep adding things to it and either moving them forward because I didn't have time, or they went to my someday maybe list, and that's basically the place where my tasks go to die. So that's far from ideal. And then at some point I was working on my finance in YNAB and I had this light bulb moment. It was like, I've been doing this all wrong. I've been trying to prioritize work after the fact and I should be doing it up front. So stick around to figure out what financial planning has to do with task management, how you can use that information to say no and get your goals done with less stress. And might, as a bonus, actually figure out some way to get your own budget in order, but that will be extra. How are time and finances related? And that's because time is money. Time and money are both resources and you can trade one for the other. So if you are going to work, you are trading your time to get money. And if you pay someone to do your garden or clean the house, then you're trading money to get back some time. Now, a problem a lot of people have with money is that they usually run out of time before they run out of money, meaning that they still have a couple of days left in the month, but there's no more money in the bank. So this is when the great ramen week starts and you try to survive on whatever you have left. And a lot of people use that time to basically measure, where did I spend all my money on, to hopefully make better decisions in the future. But that's not ideal. First of all, you're still going hungry because, well, it's end of the month and you don't have any money left. And also you're not helping your brain make smart decisions the next month, because it's a lot harder, even if you know you shouldn't be spending money on something you like, to actually do it when you don't have anything to stop you from doing it. Now, YNAB solves the budgeting issue by turning it around. So instead of looking back and saying like, hey, I should have done these things different, they look forward. So you get money and then you give your money, sets of it, a job. It's basically like having a couple of jars and putting money in each jar. And some of these jars aren't very flexible, like rent and gas and insurance and stuff like that, because it's fixed. And some of these things you decide on your own what you want to put in there, like say put $100 into entertainment. Now normally if you want to buy a AAA game, you would compare to what's on your bank account. And in the beginning of the month, you look at your bank account and it says like 1,000 or 2,000 euros, depending on your income. And it's like, I can expend 60 euros on a game. That's like no problem at all. And then the month turns around, rent gets paid, all the fixed costs get paid. And at some point your month is over and you don't have any money left. But when you assign a job up front, you don't compare to the big amounts, you compare to the small amount. So you check the 100 euro budget you put there and you go like, 60 euros is a lot of money from that 100 euro I have for entertainment for the whole month. You start thinking, because if you need more money, you know that you have to get it from one of the other cans of money that you have. And a lot of those cans, you can't take money from it because you know it won't work that way, because that will happen regardless of what you do. Like rent does not change because you decided to buy an extra game. And this engages your brain. And that's the goal you want to get here. Before you commit, before you make the mistake, you want to engage your brain. So how are tasks related to that? And that's because your task list is like commitments you're going to put into it. But to get those commits done, you need time. And time is the resource you're giving away if you tell someone that you'll do something for them. And if you look at your whole week, it becomes hard to plan. If you look at your whole task list with like 40 or 80 things on it, you don't really know what you're committing to. So what happens if you start breaking that into smaller chunks and then you assign a bit of time to those chunks, when somebody asks you something, you know at what piece of work that needs to be, and then if you use your task list right, you know what 4 or 5 tasks are in there and how much time you need, at least how many chunks you need, and then you can actually say no. because you're not saying no because you don't want to do it, or you're saying no because it's like faulty. You're saying no because you know you can't make that commitment. And that's what you're telling people. You're saying like, hey, I would love to do this, but I can't commit to it because I need to get this done first, and I promise that to other people. And then you actually have like a sensible discussion with someone, or should you really be doing that, or they'll find someone else to do it, resulting into you having more time. So that all sounds magical, but how do you keep track of that so that you can actually provide the information that's asked from you? And the first tool I use obviously will be Notion. I talked a lot about Notion, and I use that in my template system, which I will link up here, where I have the areas of responsibility, and then I assign time to the area of responsibility. And then with that time also comes like a list of projects, and that gives me an overview so I know how busy I should make each area of responsibility. Then next to that I have Todoist for the task list. Now wait a minute, you said tasks were bad. That's true, but in Todoist I make projects per area of responsibility so that I know what I committed to get that specific area done, and I know how much hours I have, so I can get into that thinking mindset. If somebody asks me, can you do this? I look at that list, I can see my commitments, I know how much time I have, and give a proper answer. And then the final tool that's essential to this is a calendar, because having these time blocks means you have to put them somewhere. Now, ideally, you want to make sure that these blocks are around 2 hours or longer, because if you make them shorter, like an hour, you probably won't get as much work done as you want because you're constantly switching between jobs. It's better to just take the morning of one day to do something and then take the next morning to do something else, than to do both on both days and keep switching in between. So that's a productivity tip right there. Also, just because it's in your calendar doesn't mean it's like this rigid structure. I move things around all the time. If my energy is low, I don't feel like it, there's a meeting that has to happen at that time, I just move it to another space in my calendar, but I don't forget it. And most importantly, by putting it in my calendar, other people that are trying to book meetings with me can't, because my calendar is already booked. My work is just as important, if not more important, than meetings. Sounds obvious, but it's tremendously how little people do this. Turn off notifications on your phone. Yes, you've heard this a million times before, but if you haven't done it by now, do it. Life is hard enough without constant distractions to take away your focus. And if you're going like, yeah, but I really need those notifications, then let me quote Uncle Roger for you.
Why so weak? So weak.
Because you don't need notifications. Nobody needs to be on point every second of the day. The only people that need these type of interruptions, like firefighters, they don't get them on their phone. There's a bell ringing that basically goes off, and that means that they have to go. The phone on or off, don't care. If you do have something that you absolutely need your phone to ring for, then make sure that it becomes an opt-in instead of an opt-out thing. So, for example, I do have my phone configured that if my son sends me a notification or calls me, my phone does go off. But he's opt-in. He is special. Special people get special treatment, like direct access to my brain by sending me notifications. Treat it as such. Anybody that gets to interrupt your day by sending you a notification which rings your phone is direct access to your brain. Switch it off and only switch it on for those people that matter in your life. Block things in your calendar. And you don't have to start this thing by doing 100 things. Just block 1 or 2 or 3 hour blocks. Assign them to something. And you'll start doing this more often, because you'll get more done in those 2-3 hours than the rest of the week combined if you're any type of busy. And do not only block things like work for it, but also block out time for the other things that you find important. It could be sports, but also more important than that, family. I've heard too many people going like, why do you block time for family? Shouldn't that happen naturally? And I'm going like, really? Dave from accounting gets like a fixed half hour in your calendar, but your mom does not? Like, where's your priority there? Also, make sure that the blocks aren't too short. If you start getting into blocks of an hour, you're managing too much, and it's much better to just pick 2 hours and then once every 2 weeks than 1 hour a week where you spend most of the time setting up instead of actually getting something done. Don't fill up your calendar to 100%. Once you get to this, you might be tempted to fill out all blocks and make sure that you can work efficient. Nobody is 100% efficient, and the empty space between these blocks is the lubrication that keeps it working. By having some space when things like don't work out or life throws a spanner in it, you can move things around. It's like one of those sliding puzzles where there's like one piece missing so you can solve it. It becomes a lot easier once there's more things missing. And it's the same when you're trying to manage your time in a calendar. Stop committing and start saying maybe. Instead of saying yes or no to any request people are saying, say maybe, but I'll need to look into it, and then defer it to when your actual block of assigned time is. Because at that point in time, you know what your commitments are, you know the time, you can look at it, and you can provide a sensible answer without over or under committing. And it's much easier than just saying flat out no, because when you say flat out no, people usually go like, but why? And then they need a reason, and you spend the time and you waste like 15 minutes talking to them. Sometimes that's even longer than actually doing the task. Start organizing meetings. And I hear you thinking right now, like, boss, you were just talking about meetings not being important and getting rid of them. So why would I organize them and just add to the pile? And that's because if you organize the meeting, you also control how the meeting looks. You control the length, you control the agenda, you control when. And that's actually pretty good, because that means you can save time by making it shorter. And here's one thing that I've noticed. Nearly never anybody that I say like, hey, let's just do it in a half an hour goes like, oh, that's a bit short, make it an hour. So you win half an hour's left and right. And then if you let other people organize meetings, not only do they pick an hour, sometimes they pick longer than that, like 1.5 hours, maybe even 2 hours. That's called a Bruce Willis. That's enough time for Bruce Willis to save the world. This meeting is not going to be that epic. I'm pretty sure it's going to be horrible actually, because long meetings to me usually mean laziness. A person just grabs people together and thinks that will magically solve the problem in 1.5 hours. I've nearly never seen that work. Be sure to check one out of my other videos over here. And if you learned something, then be sure to like, subscribe, add comments. They all helped me to get more exposure on YouTube. And remember, you're awesome. Keep it up.